Hello. Oh, look already. John Levesque. Nice to hear from you. Hello. Welcome, everyone. We are doing a recap this morning of Power Platform announcements from Microsoft Build. Well, it's this morning for me. My name's Lisa Crosbie. I am in Melbourne, Australia at 7 a.m. live. I'll let E introduce herself.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Eliza. I'm based in Wellington in New Zealand and it's about 9 a.m. over here. And I'm so stoked to be joining Lisa today to talk about Microsoft Build because it's been another jam packed live event of all these goodies that are coming our way.
Indeed, it has. And so I'd say good afternoon, John. If anyone else is watching, give us a hello in the chat. I think we tend to find with these things that the audience builds a little while after we go live. And we did throw this one on the schedule at the last minute last night. So where should we start, E? From the top down?
Yeah, let's start with the man of the hour, Satya, his keynote.
Indeed. So what are your... There we go. Hello, Kevin. What did you think, E? What did you take away from the keynote?
Well, okay, apart from like the part where he talked about like the low code, no code app development, one thing that stood out for me, now I can't remember which of the 10 it came under because there were so many, like it was just bang, 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 bang. I don't know about you when you were watching the keynote, but I was like, whoa, I can't keep up. There's things like, was it cloud ubiquity or app ubiquity? I can't remember,
See if I
but
can find it.
but the one
I'm
that
going to do a total pro live stream thing here.
But the one that I thought was pretty cool, so not related to the Power Platform at all, was the segment around the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. And the reason why this stood out for me is as someone who has worked with, sites before, so portals, whether it's, a Microsoft portal or another competing portal product, he talked about how you can have like an e-commerce site on top of the Azure Intelligent Data Platform. And so when it came to that bit, I was like, oh, what is this? So what is it? It's basically being able to take or leverage the Azure services behind the scenes when you need to have some type of responsive uh, transactions or cross-correlating data in real time to go and push what you think your consumer on the e-commerce site would want to buy. So the building blocks that he talked about was using Azure DB Cosmos or SQL Hyperscale, as in terms of the data platform. And then on top of that, you have something like Azure Synapse Link that can take all of those transactions in real time and do those cool analytics. And then you had machine learning that could, do all the fancy stuff and predict, what is it that the consumer wants to see and relay that back to them, and then using Power BI reporting to see how well you're performing. And the use case that he used was Cyber Monday. Now I know we don't have that here over in this side of the world, but I can see, over in the United States, when it comes to those big online events such as Black Friday.
Oh, you have Black Friday. We get Black Friday here, and I think
Yeah,
Cyber
we
Monday is
started.
increasingly creeping in. To be honest, we don't
Yeah,
have
we started.
Thanksgiving. We don't have Thanksgiving, but we'll have these online sales anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that whole concept was pretty cool because I never thought, I never considered building your own custom website on top of something like Azure, in other words, the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform. So it just made me go, oh, okay. There's endless possibilities with the Microsoft ecosystem. Yeah, that was one thing that stood out for me. And then the other one was, and I did see tweets about it, was the new, I think it's called Voltari now. I'm not like
Oh
a
yeah, that was
technical
like
device
backstage.
person. Yeah, and I did see that someone commented on Twitter it was designed by PMs in the Surface team, so that's why it has like that nice look. But then I saw like people who are really into devices and all of that were, kind of having a bit of back and forth in Twitter saying why it was good and why it wasn't. So, yeah. What about
Do
you?
you know
What did you
As much
like
as
about Satya's keynote?
yeah, as much as I don't, oh, here it is. It was this thing. As much as I don't work in that
Yes.
space, I've got to say I was sitting there
Yeah.
kind of going, yeah. So for me, if we kind of fast forward along to the other end, obviously we get our low code, no code
Yeah.
topics, which we will come back to. But this piece about, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about that. I know we're going to talk about that. There was a whole piece here around collaborative apps, and this is around Teams extendability. And I haven't had a chance yet to get into all of the content, and most of the content around Teams, obviously build is mostly pro dev content, but this whole put Teams in your apps and put your apps in Teams is pretty much the summary of it. And then there's all of these things that you can do. But there was a line in here about, Microsoft Graph is all the information about what people are doing and how they're working. And then combined with Teams, you're bringing that into the place where they're working. There was just a really good sort of line there about the graph and Teams. And there's something like 50% of the apps being used are using the graph. So there was just this lovely sort of, sometimes the script is so well written, you've just got to go, nicely. It was like, bring the things about how your people are working together into the place where they're working together. And we've got all this stuff for avatars as well. Are you have you done anything represented as an avatar?
No, but I have taken place in Alt Space VR events. So that's the closest thing that I've done, but I don't own like a HoloLens or a VR headset. I don't have that at all. But going
either, but I've done the same in Alt Space VR, and even the 2D avatar thing is much better than you think. You can't hear me very well. I'm going to move my microphone. I'm having some AV issues this morning. Debbie, let me know if that's better. May also have been that my microphone is on this side of me and the screen that I'm sharing is on that side, and I turned my head the wrong way. So let's see.
But going back to your comment earlier about collaborating in Teams and building your apps in Teams, there's an on-demand session by our friend in the community, April Dunham. So she works at Microsoft as a cloud developer advocate. And I recommend to check out her session because she's really good at going through in detail, the different steps and like the key capabilities of it. Yeah.
Awesome. And so then I think the next one down in the level is our keynote, I guess, which was a shared keynote with Charles Lamada and Jeff Teeper.
Yeah. Well, shit. Okay. I guess I can talk about it. But I guess there was, we got a bit of eye candy for a little bit. So when I say eye candy, we saw like new icons. We saw a new icon for Power Platform. We saw a cool new icon for AI Builder. There's now another one for Power FX. So it's kind of showing like the breadth of the services that we're now going to see with the Power Platform. And then the new kid on the block is of course Power Pages. So I can talk about that later. But and then we obviously saw that one of the big things which he also alluded to earlier as part of Satya's keynote was the whole express design and Power Apps. That's really, really exciting. So I can't wait to hear your view on that.
That was one of those kind of taking a photo and building an app, but anyway, we will come back to that. It was interesting though that the keynote there was a shared one between the M365 and Power Apps. I mean, when you look at this, the whole space of build, let's do this thing of the whole space of build, and when you look at, actually, we should also refer to the Book of News if anyone hasn't seen that. Let me bring that up as well, because the Microsoft Build Book of News, and they do this so well, like honestly as a format, for new releases, we could all take a leaf out of this book. So let me see if I can share this piece. Here we go. So the Book of News, and it has all of this stuff in here where you can go table of contents, and if you look at the big scheme of what's being covered here, there's a heap of stuff. Like, I mean, Azure is the hero piece of all of that, really. And Power Platform gets one spot, and Microsoft 365 gets one spot. So I noticed they were talking about Loop a lot in the collaborative apps bit, and using examples that were not dynamics. So it's oh, look, here it is between Teams and Outlook and Zoho, and sort of, I think, proving that concept that it goes outside of the Microsoft platform. But just for perspective, where we're focusing on this bit and a little bit here, there's all of this stuff that's a little outside my wheelhouse. So I guess this is why we get a combined keynote, right?
Yeah, true, because we saw Microsoft Loop back in Microsoft Ignite last year in November, I believe. So it's really cool that we're seeing more enhancements to it. And I think maybe one of the reasons now, this is me just speculating in terms of having both Jeff and Charles, is just showing again, how the entire platform is working together and it's no longer, siloed off from each other. There's like greater interaction and collaboration, and we see it across the sessions, right? So things like we have, Azure Cognitive Services driving the predictive, object detection in terms of the express design for Power Apps. But it's also being, embedded in things like Dynamics 365 customer service, even though it wasn't showcased today, but like the whole, pushing suggestions back to the case agent, the customer agent on how to handle that case. Like it's all working together, even though to us as end users, we just see it as a single unified experience. And I think that's what the whole team is aiming for, really.
Yeah. And then the other conversation that's interesting to me is talking about whether or not low code has a place at Build. Have you seen some of this chatter online?
Yeah, I have. It's very interesting, but it's when I say interesting, it's kind of divided the community. Well, I wouldn't say divided, but it shows how you have people who have been in this space for a very, very long time, who are veterans who know their stuff inside out, and then to have no-code, low-code platforms emerging. So it's not just Microsoft. There's other companies out there, like Appian is a well-known one, who are also doing the same, playing in the same field. And it's because I think, as Charles has said in the past, because we're now in this age of working remotely, we're not necessarily always going to be in the office 24/7, and therefore if you're the type of company that works globally, you need to have a greater digital reach, whether it's within your company or with your consumers or the customers that you're working with. And so because that pace is evolving, there's not enough people in the world that have, let's say, the competency of developers who we've always turned to when we need something that needs to, come to life in terms of a solution. And so by having all of these tech giants come up with no-code, low-code platforms, it's actually empowering the people who know their business processes inside out to build something on their own through self-learning. And then if they want to, take it to the next level, then that's where they would reach out to a pro code developer or someone else within their organization that has that background. And that's that whole concept of fusion teams. So it does have its place, but at the same time, I can empathize for those who are like, oh, no code, low code is just a way of getting something done real fast, but it hasn't go through the proper, rigorous testing and deploying it properly, following best practices. And that's why we need to work together as a fusion team, so that we can lean on those who have been doing it for years. But then you have initiatives like the Power Platform Center of Excellence Toolkit, and now we have the upcoming Automation Automation Center of Excellence Toolkit coming to help companies prioritize whatever's in the backlog, be on top of all the solutions that their employees, whether they're a pro code developer or a no code, low code developer, are building. But I don't know. I feel like I've rambled on. Have I made sense at all? I mean, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I'm very much low code poster child, I suppose. And I read that stuff and I totally understand where it comes from, because if that had been my profession of like, this is specialist knowledge that I'm trained for, and I've done this and I've got this valuable skill, and suddenly people like me are coming in and going, look at me, I'm an app maker. And Build is a developer conference, but even just looking at the book of news there, and if you look at the sessions, I think I saw some comments that were like, oh, there's so much low code in Build. Honestly, as a low code person, there's hardly anything. There's a couple of sessions in there, there's a couple of really important key things which we'll talk about. But the vast majority of this is still pro dev. And honestly, as someone who does low code, we still need all of that. And it's abstracted from us, so we might not always appreciate it, but it's code underneath, it's pro code underneath that enables people like me to do the low code. So
Yeah.
even before we get to the proper sort of fusion development ways of working together, who do we think is building the low code tools? It's actually more work. And the idea of being able to say, I want this button to be blue instead of red, like, spend your time on the really clever stuff. So anyway, the perspective on it is going to be different where you come from, but I think, whether we like it or not, low code absolutely has a place. But I really feel like from my point of view, looking at build, it doesn't have, there is so much substance in the pro developer stuff that really you shouldn't have to look too far to not feel that there isn't an opportunity there as well.
Yeah.
Now, I believe we are live on Twitter as well, and because I like
cool. Hey, Twitter.
I messaged
Elon, are you listening to us?
By the way, we're also going live on Twitter. I did bring it up on my phone, and I can see that it's there. So I think we are. But if anyone is seeing this on Twitter, give us a shout. I can certainly see comments coming through on YouTube, and hello, lots of hellos there. Link to the book of news I've posted in there. If anyone has got any thoughts about stuff we're talking about, questions, highlights, please pop them in, because we can see that as we go through. All right. Pages. Should we talk about pages?
Yes, let's talk about Power Pages.
Well,
it's exciting for me because I came across Portals when it was formerly known as ADX Studio Portals. So this is when I was living and working in Melbourne, and back then it was probably around, I think 2015, where I was on this project, and I remember thinking, this is so different, and this is someone who knows Dynamics 365. Well, because I started with CRM4 version 4, right? And you get thrown into configuring a portal with ADX Studio Portals, and it was just a steep learning curve. Like, there was so many things that you needed to know in terms of how to configure what was then called a web form, but now they're called basic forms, and things like the web roles in terms of the access. And it was, as I mentioned, it was a steep learning curve. And then seeing how much it has evolved to Power Pages today is a lot better than from when I learned it. So it's really exciting to see that the product team have listened over the years and are trying to make it a lot more easier for no code, low code, or even pro developers to get on board with building portals with Power Pages. Now, what I do like about Power Pages is that they've now created what we call a design studio. So previously with Power Apps portals, or if you started with Dynamics 365 portals, when you wanted to create your web pages, you would have to do it either in the model driven app, or you could do it at the front end. So if you had a web role of, I think, administrator for the portal, then you could do your edits in line within the portal itself, but you still needed to have, let's say, the foundation set up in the model driven app. So things like you needed to have your columns or your tables created, you needed to have your, what we call your entity form within a solution that gets displayed as a basic form on the portal. But now you can do it all directly in the design studio. So they've broken it down to what we call now workspaces. So the first one that you have is called Pages workspace. So you can choose no code components, so things like images, video, you can create your form, you can create your lists and more. And then you have a styling workspace, so you can create your own custom themes. I'm just going to call them themes, or you can choose preset themes as well. So you can align it with your company branding. And then you've got the data workspace. So as I mentioned before, before the design studio, you had to create your tables and columns within Dataverse, but now you can do it directly within the design studio. And then the other cool thing is that you have different templates to choose from. So you've got things like default templates, you've got something like a scheduling template, which allows you to manage event schedules, attendee or member registration, or appointments, or in-person virtual meetings. And then there's another one called, I think, registration template. So this one's more like the ability to create, track, and manage event or class registrations. So I guess think of it as like I don't know, like a conference. Like I suppose if you want to set up a conference registration site and you want to have, let's say, in-person sessions, and then maybe arrange something like a workshop, and then maybe like a panel. I guess you could do that with the registration templates, but it's really cool. And then the other cool thing is the Learn Hub. So for those of you who remember one of our former Microsoft MVPs, Nick Dolman, so he's based in Canada, he had quite a lot of input in the content that's showing in Learn Hub today. So it's basically allowing you as a person who is new to Power Pages to learn Power Pages on the get-go. So it's got guides, it's got tutorials, it's got video tutorials. So if you're more of a visual learner, you can go ahead and watch the videos. And then in terms of the developer tools, now to me this is really exciting because there's a couple of things that stand out. So you can change your code in line now within the Design Studio, which is really cool. But then if you want to still, tinker around using Visual Studio Code, you can do that, because now you can download your portal as a project. You can make changes in there, so you can apply JavaScript, do things like Liquid. You could call, I guess, the web APIs as well from there, and then when you're all done, you can pretty much upload your project back into the portal, and then Power Pages, and then boom, all of the core advanced capabilities that you've done within Visual Studio is now there, and it's really cool. But that's the positive side of it, and I guess what we don't see from Microsoft Build is the commentary that happens by people who actually are the people building Power Pages. Now, what I mean by that is, I have seen some chatter on Twitter where people are like, "Hey, that's really cool that we have Power Pages. However, like the cost is still the same." So just a recap in case those of you who aren't familiar with the licensing of Power Pages, there's pretty much two types of licensing. It's either done by logins or web views, and it's always been a heated topic of discussion because there are some companies out there who can't see the value or the benefit from the cost of Power Pages. However, there are still companies out there who are doing really great things with Power Pages. So, if we look across over the United States, we've got two not-for-profit organizations. One of them is Coal to Recycle. So they are a not-for-profit in the United States who are currently using Power Pages, and it's to do with their e-battery recycling program for bikes. So in the last, couple of years, electric bikes have become quite popular, and then to deal with a defective, damaged, or end-of-life e-bike battery, something needs to be done with that. So Culture to Recycle is using Power Pages, and then you've got another not-for-profit, Degrees of Change. So they're in the education workspace. But then if we now move across to this side of the world in terms of Australia and New Zealand, we also have Hearing Australia. So Hearing Australia was one of the customers that Ryan Cunningham and Satya had done a showcase on in their session. So they're also going to be using Power Pages as well. So even though that there are cost barriers, when you look at customers like the three that I've mentioned and you see what they're doing with Power Pages, it's an eye-opener, but I do get it in terms of the cost is still a prohibitor, and I know it's controversial.
Conversation is always
and at the end of the day, we have to remember that if you don't go with Power Pages, it's fine. There are other portal platforms out there, but they're not going to have the same no-code, low-code capabilities because you don't have the built-in integration that comes with Para Pages. So, for example, if you use something like the Portal connector, you need to have pro developers who are familiar with Sitefinity because it does use that framework. And then if you use something like Umbraco, which is another CMS platform, again, you need to have some pro developer expertise to help you connect it with either Dataverse or Dynamics 365. So there's ups and downs, and I guess some of it is covered by that licensing cost. But the other thing I do want to talk about is I don't know if everyone knows about this. Now, in terms of Microsoft, they have a YouTube channel. So the YouTube channel is Microsoft Para Platform, and they do a series called Paracat Live. And one of the videos that popped up 2 months ago was from Dileep Singh. So Dileep Singh, he is I believe a principal architect in the Para Pages team. Now Dileep is one of those PMs that I greatly admire because he comes from a Dynamics background, and then he got involved in portals, I think around 2016. And what he did in this video was he showcased progressive web applications, so PWA, and they have since lighted up this feature for Para Pages. So what is PWA? Basically, you can turn your Para Pages portal into an app. Like, that's pretty cool. So with a number of clicks, so you have to enable it, and then on your browser you can download it as an app. Now, when I say you could download it as an app, you could download it as an app either on your mobile, your desktop, your tablet, Xbox even. I know John Levesque is a big Xbox fan, so hey John. And it just gives you like a better reach in terms of how your customers want to interact with your portal, so they can now do either through a web client experience or through an app experience. And the whole idea with it is that you pretty much build for your different layouts once. So you don't need to have dedicated responsive design. Like, it just simply takes care of it, and it's pretty cool. And the nice thing about PWA with Para Pages is that you can have online and offline experience. So if you want to do it for an offline experience, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is configure your web pages that you want to be read only. So let's just make that clear. It's really for web pages that you only want to make read only. In the scenario where you want to have some type of interaction or transactions, such as processing a payment on the portal through a payment gateway, that's something that you wouldn't do for offline capability. But if you need to have like a read-only offline experience, and this is a perfect use case of why you would use PWA. I feel like I've gone a lot about Para Pages.
I'm moderating and posting in the chat for you here. So I've found that video. I popped a link in there.
Okay, cool.
I want to give a shout out, and I've already put this in the chat, to Nick Dolman's blog. So we mentioned Nick. Yes. Honestly, as a go-to explainer, if you need to get across this is great. And I think, certainly out of everything you've just said there, it's absolutely clear this is not just a name change, because the other thing you see that goes around this is people just go, oh, you just gave it a new icon. So now we have I'll find the picture in a minute of sort of all the icons and the new icons in the platform, and you've just renamed it. And there's a very cynical thing about renaming, which we all know where that comes from. But I'll put the link to this one in if you're not up for sort of digesting the bigger parts of material. This is the guy who was a portals expert as an MVP and is now involved in the product. And
yes, go
new design studio. So this is a really nice structured way of putting it together. So we've got the new Pages workspace, and you've talked through all these things: the styling workspace, the data workspace, and the setup workspace. So I think and for me, I'm not a I know when you and I work together, I would always come to you with my portal stuff. And of all of the things that I've been very hands-on with, portals is not a specialty area for me. Also, shout out to Jackie Peck from Hearing Australia. Hello.
Yeah, Jackie. Hello.
She does interact with our community here, and hello and well done, and congratulations on getting your name on the big screen at Build. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it might even have been in the keynote, but there we go. She's there. She's in the session with Ryan Cunningham, and where they do that overview, and she gets featured on the screen. So congratulations, because honestly, you do work like that and get a shout out like that. That's a moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is.
just even looking at it, as someone who hasn't come to this before, I'm looking at this thinking, I could do that. I just whereas every time I've gone
exactly.
into this before, I've gone, oh, it's learning curve. I need to come back to this and learn it properly. Whereas this looks to me like something I could tackle without kind of spending a long time learning different stuff. And then the bit where you can manage your Dataverse tables inside here is pretty cool too, because this is this new look and feel for managing the tables that we see in Dataverse for Teams. So just this really kind of easy solution designer, and that you can get to that stuff without having to go back through all of the things. So I reckon I'm going to get into this.
Well, that's good.
More accessible to me than it has before. Like, you and I coming from opposite ends of the experience spectrum here, because you kind of made your first mark as an MVP in portals, and with that background, and of all of the things I've done, this is one I've dabbled in and not really played with. So for someone like me, I'm pretty much a good target audience for this. I feel like from watching this, templates, and importantly, templates that don't require Dynamics 365, because at the moment you want a customer service template, you have to have customer service. These are not these are Power Platform things. You don't have to have Dynamics 365, and I feel like I could just work through those things, and I could start with a template that's going to be very rich and isn't complicated, and then there's just all these kind of drag and drop components on the screen. So I actually feel really excited about having a go at this now. So
and you're spot on, because when you go through the new Power Pages experience, as you provision a new Power Page. So for those of you who don't know what provision means, it's basically when you want to spin up a new Power Page site, it's going to take you through a guided experience. So things like, what is it that you want to do, choose your template, and then there's a whole bunch of other things in the guided experience, and then you pretty much have your Power Pages site that ready in a few minutes. And in terms of the behind the scenes, the setup, so previously anything that was to do with the administration of the portal, you had to go to the administration center, which is again outside of that interface. But now, again, they've brought it into the design studio. So now if you want to enable what we call authentication with identity providers, so your typical ones are things like Azure B2C authentication, and then you have things like Microsoft, LinkedIn, Facebook. I can't remember what the other supported ones are, but they used to be pretty, daunting. And if you don't know what you were doing, well, you didn't know what you were doing. You had to seek help from someone.
I didn't know what I was doing, and so I didn't know what I was doing. And it's not that I couldn't learn it, but I think, and this is the other thing we're seeing with all of these low-code tools, is there's one thing to say it's low-code, and we see this with PowerFX as well. But there's still a learning curve, and you still, if you're a beginner and you sit down and you've got a day job, and you've got, even for someone like me where this essentially is my day job, it's big. There's a lot to learn. And you sit down, and if there's just a barrier to entry, you sort of sit and go, can't even work out I can't work out how to know what I don't know. Like I'll sit down, I cannot even begin to figure out where to start. Whereas this, I sit down and go, start here, learn this, start with this template. It's welcoming me in, and then it's obvious as anyone who's done any kind of drag and drop. There's a palette on the side, and there's a plus button next to a component. And I've designed, WordPress sites before. It feels more like a WordPress template. So I kind of come to it with a starting point that's much more welcoming.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's what I mean. Like if you don't want to use Power Pages for whatever reason, that's fine, but you just don't have those building blocks in the same way that you would get in Power Pages compared to a different platform. Now, I'm a believer in terms of, educating people and for people to make the decision in terms of what path they want to go with. So I've always, said to customers who I've worked with, it's fine if you don't want to go with Power Pages, but if you do go with a different platform, then you just have to keep in mind that you need to do the integration pieces yourself, and then you need to have some type of expertise there who knows that platform. And if you're going with a provider that has their own ISV with Dataverse or Dynamics 365 in terms of their IP portal, that's cool as well. But it just means that for any support, you would have to go with them. Whereas something like Power Pages, whenever you do want support, you've got a number of options, which is either raising a support ticket, going through the partner that you've worked with, and if, heaven forbid you don't like that partner, you can go to another partner who has that experience. Yeah. So it's every piece of technology has their advantages and disadvantages. So yeah.
Exactly. All right. Now I'm sure that we could talk portals all day, and we could talk the other things all day too. I've got two other big things I really want to talk about. One of them is this Power Apps incredible thing, and the other
Express
one is
design.
Power Virtual Agents has got some pretty awesome
I
stuff
know Power Virtual Agents is it's gone from here to here. Like I've seen, it's like a tweet about Power Virtual Agents leveling up, and it's funny because when I saw that, it just made me think of Mario Super World. You know how you have Mario, and then he comes across the mushroom, and then he goes. That's what I think in terms of Power Virtual Agents. Yeah.
So let's have a look at Power Virtual Agents while we're here. And I am lucky enough that I've had a bit of a go with the tech preview. And within the first 5 minutes of dragging and dropping and creating a message card without any adaptive card stuff, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. So while I find the screen here, the story around Power Virtual Agents is that we've had the evolution of it has been to bring Bot Framework Composer in. So that's that blend of low code and pro code tools. But I don't know how to use Bot Framework Composer. And it's been very two parts integrated, but not seamlessly joined. So it's very much still like a handoff kind of scenario. So what we've got here is essentially a blended version, which brings those things much closer together. But then from my point of view, the exciting thing is around the revamp of the actual canvas for
the authoring canvas.
Share the screen and kind of speak back to the right part of the microphone here. So
there we go.
So, I'm going high degree of difficulty today. And hello to all of the other people who've joined us along the way. April joined us a while back. Chris, John, Shaheen, hello. Lots of hellos. Give us a comment. Anything here you disagree with, agree with, excited about? Anyone else like me going to get started with Pages now? So this is that's the end of that bit. So we've got here this idea of being able to create these cards, these messaging cards. There's a couple of things. Oh, there we go. There's the end of it. There's Power Effects formulas in Power Virtual Agents as well. So these message cards that you can create, you can basically go in now and say, here we go. There's this. So you can say, I want to add media and add quick reply. So this is something you couldn't do before. So you go in and say, here's my message. Here we go. Here's a message variation. And I want to go in and say, here's an image that I want to add. There's the URL. Boom, done. So, I mean, this can't be easier than that. And then this option to also add quick replies. So that it comes up with the thing. So you used to have to do that by sort of adding a multiple choice question, which it was just a bit sort of clunky. So this now allows you to put those things in. I've had a bit of a play with this. You can also add a video. You can also add more text. You can have like a heading and a subheading and text and stuff. So it can be really quite rich in what it's presenting. Then there's all this stuff about speech. So this SSML, which is a markup language, so you can use this to say emphasis, and so this whole thing is now connected up with the voice stuff in there. I need to have a go at seeing if I can get that through the Azure services that I've got to play with. But it's really they talk then about voice fonts, which I find. Yeah. I love that use of the word font. So it's like you can choose a voice font that's a different accent or a different gender or different style.
What's your font for the week?
Yeah, what's my voice font is Aussie. But then we've got a thing here which is about bringing, and this is real. I mean, the other stuff makes it look awesome, but this is a game changer here, is bringing power effects and more that you can do with variables in here. So we've got commenting on the side. So we're seeing that across a whole lot of things in that collaboration inside the apps. But also we've got this thing where you can say, I'll create a variable, just like a standalone variable. So this use case here is I need to calculate the difference in days. So let's go in and add a variable, and then this is Power FX. So if you know how to do Power FX in Canvas apps, then that skill set crosses over here. And this is a big direction. When they announced Power FX, they alluded to the fact that it would be used across more parts of the platform. The announcement of it being part of creating calculated formulas in model-driven apps, but seeing it here now, this is great. And you can use it for conditional branching as well. So it just brings that thing. And again, all this talk about platform, the more that we reuse these skills in different places, the better, because the learning curve is reduced and so on. So this allows us to put that in there.
There's a few things that I quite liked about Gary's demo with the new conversational bot experience, as well as the authoring Canvas experience. So a few things that stood out for me was not only the Power FX variables, but it's now, from memory, you can now use Power FX variables against lists as well. So that's something that's typically used by pro code developers when you want to iterate through a list. And then the other thing that I quite like was when you want to build your bot for the IVR, you can pretty much do it within the same authoring canvas. Like, you don't need to build two separate bots just to accommodate for that.
And what we're seeing here too is building the adaptive card in the same experience as well. So that you don't have to be switching back and forth to somewhere else to do that.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I quite like about the telephony experience as well is that I think it's Azure Communication Services. Yeah, Azure Communication Services. By having the interaction with the caller through IVR, so IVR stands for, I think, Instant Voice Recognition, you can now have those incoming variables as well. So things like the caller ID, whatever they've entered in the keypad. So the business use case that came into mind was banks. Like, when you ring up your bank, it asks you to enter your customer number. And then behind the scenes, I guess they do some matching between the number that you're calling from as well as your customer number to verify that it is you, in fact, who is calling about your account. So it's cool things like that. And I'm really looking forward to the level up experience of Power Virtual Agents, because it's definitely going to be, in your words, a game changer, because now those pro code capabilities are within that authoring canvas. So it's going to help all makers of all levels to be able to build a bot.
And I think this is a big thing to land, is this moment of it's all together, because then the roadmap can go forward from there. So I think this is the start of even more. There. All right, I don't want to run out of time to talk about Power Apps. I'm going to share this screen and I'm just going to play. I'm going to play this.
So
this is
exciting.
Actually like a downloadable asset from Build. It's just music in the background, which I'm not playing. But what we're seeing here, this is kind of our wow factor moment. Oh, I want to build an app. I'll just take my paper form and take a photo and then bring it in. And this is like an AI builder type experience. So
this is where I was talking about earlier, where we're seeing all of the services work together, but to us as a front end user, we don't necessarily see that, but behind the scenes it's all working together. So this is where they're using the Azure Object Detection to try and match whatever is in that scanned image with the input control component in your Canvas app. And it's so cool. Like, come on.
Oh, I know, right? That's just like, hold my beer. Let's do that. And then, the other part of this is around creating from Figma. So, creating from, so what we're seeing here, the trend across all of this is around saying design skill and app making skill can be separate. Like, and even as the way I see that we build Power Apps here, you'll have a designer involved. If you're doing something that's got to be really, like if you're doing personal productivity, I can go in and do stuff. But honestly, as much as I can make Power Apps, I'm not winning any awards for how beautiful they are because I'm not a designer. And we have designers, and if we're building beautiful Power Apps for customers, we've got a professional designer involved, and they use tools like Figma. And so at the moment, then you're sort of having to replicate, you do the mock-up in Figma and then redo it in Power Apps. But this thing now is, let's do the design in Figma, and Figma has components in it that are the Power Apps components. So I'll let this sort of play through for a minute, but it comes up with a button. So you can add a button, and it's actually a Power Apps button that's sort of in Figma, and it comes in the design you're doing in Figma with the properties of what a Power Apps button would have. And then when we get to it, when you go into create an app, start from Figma and bring your Figma file in. So you're not having to redo that work. So for me, that thing of like collaboration between a designer and someone who understands the data and the app making part, there's a lovely handoff there and a much more efficient way of getting these things done. Here we go. Create from Figma. So create from paper form, create from I've done a sketch and do it, or from a PDF or whatever, and create from Figma, and you just link it in. So yeah, now I need to learn how to use Figma as well. My learning, there's not enough hours. It's not enough.
I know, but it's interesting because like I saw again another MVP in our community, Natraj. So Natraj is based in Melbourne in Australia. So he tweeted it, and then another MVP who's very well known in our community, based in Finland, Yuka. Yuka responded by saying, "Hey, I've had a look at Figma, but as someone who isn't well skilled at Figma yet, it just looks like a blank slate." So I found it interesting as well. But you're right in terms of saying it's for designers who are used to these tools. Yeah.
And we had a bit of an internal chat here about Figma, and anyone who's done any work in design is like, yeah, that's awesome. I get it. People who've done training in design and so on. So as much as I can go, oh, I need to learn it, really I don't, because the whole point here is that I'm an app maker and there are other people. Because even if I could learn Figma, that does not make me a designer. I'm not a designer. I have an eye for, I like that, but I want someone who, when I hand off stuff to a professional designer to be done, the stuff that comes back is amazing. So people like me and, those of us in the community who are app makers and know data stuff aren't necessarily, most of us are not also designers.
Exactly.
Designers can do their job, and we can just use that work without having to have it redone in the canvas.
Yeah. And then, once you have that app up and running in your Canvas app, is just simply plug and play, choosing your data source through the different connectors that are available, putting in your Power FX formulas to do some manipulation in terms of the data that you want to be sent or received from your data source. But then also now, one of the updates with Canvas apps is you can now build your flow directly within the Canvas app itself. Whereas previously, you had to do it separately, but now you can do it in line within the Canvas app designer, which is cool. There's a lot of cool things coming.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are a couple of other things on the Power Automate side, which I, a bit beyond where I understand, but there's a piece around unattended RPA with virtual machines. So if you're working RPA at scale, check that one out. But there's also a thing, and there's a great example of embedding Power BI in your SaaS app. So there's an example of Adobe, I think it's Adobe Sign, where
you mean Power Automate. You said Power BI. That one? So that's the whole experience where soon you're going to be able to embed the UI configuration experience of Cloud Flows into your SaaS application. But then what Steven Siciliano alluded to was you could also pay on behalf of your customers who are using that service within your SaaS platform or application. And he did say that, there's more details to come at the upcoming Microsoft Inspire conference. So that was pretty cool. I don't know if you did you watch any of the Power Automate tracks?
No.
Okay.
Everything. I've got to cross
Yeah,
the
well,
board.
that's cool. That's fine. I can talk about some of the new actions that are coming with Power Automate
I'll find
for
some images
desktop.
while you talk about it.
Okay, so the session that you want to find is Ashvini Sharma's session. So
Right.
he is one of the group program managers in the Power Automate product team, and he first handed off to a program manager called Nico, and he was the one that was going through the new actions that are coming for Power Automate for desktop. And there's a few that I did like. Oh, sorry, my headset just fell off. I'll just keep talking while I try to find it. So one of them is to do with messages. So you can now, message boxes. I think that's where it appears on the left-hand side. So you can now display messages in the form of either read-only messages or where you want to get some type of interaction from the end user. So in other words, a dialogue. And the cool thing that Nico showed was how you can display like a custom form. But the really awesome thing about the custom form is that you can design that custom form yourself. So there's going to be like different components where you can select inputs. So think of a date input. You can select an element such as a text block for the text, and then you've got actions, whether it's a submit button or you want the user to launch a URL. And it's really cool because now the use case that he showed was he displayed a form where he was asking, I think, for the full name, the date of birth, and the age possibly. Continent, that was the one. And so all of that data that the user enters gets saved as a variable, so you'll see it on the right hand side of the screen, and then you can use that downstream in your flow. The other one that stood out for me is to do with script highlighting. So for those of you who are no code, low code, or citizen developers, and you work with pro code developers, sometimes when you look or peep over the person's shoulder, you'll see that they're working either in something like Visual Studio Code Editor or even Notepad++, and you'll see that they're working with lines of code, and you'll see like different colors. So what I mean by that is if you see something that's in green, so there's a couple of backslashes in green, that shows something has been commented out. And then if it's a SQL statement, things like the operations like select or the group by, that'll appear in a different color, let's say blue or red. So previously when you're working with scripts in Power Automate for desktop, like it's all just one color, but now they've provided some visual aspect to it. So for you as a pro code developer, you can see your code in line in this script highlighted to make any modifications that you need to. So I think that's pretty handy. And then I also saw that there's now going to be support for launching in the Edge browser. I think previously it was for the Internet Explorer browser. So that's pretty cool. And then there was something around a new data property type. I think it's to do with column header rows and column names. Column list, that's one. So column data row is where it'll pick up the row of columns for the table that's displayed on the web page, and then column list is where it will list the names of the column. That's kind of what I picked up from that. I probably need to play with it some more, but those were the updates for Power Automate for desktop. And then I think the next person that he brought up was Natalie. So Natalie is another PM who's based over in the United States. So she leads and manages the independent publisher connectors. So basically anyone can create a custom connector and get it, I think verified is the right word, and then it gets published as an independent connector. Now, again, Twitter is always a place for voice of opinion. There were, some tweets. There were some tweets about, there's some, custom connectors that have been published that don't really have a business use case. But you know what? Like, there needs to be some fun in this world. It can't always be serious. So, there's a Star Wars API that I believe Paul Cumsey, who's a Microsoft MVP in Perth, Australia, built, which is pretty cool. But, at the end of the day, when you're building your own custom connector, which I've done with the Spotify web API and the YouTube API, I mean, yeah, it's for a fun user experience, but at the same time, what you learn when you build your custom connector can still be applied in the enterprise use case, because you're learning about, how to do the authentication with that API service, how you perform, the API requests, whether it's, like a GET request, and you're also learning how to work with that particular API service. So I wouldn't call it as, something that isn't valuable, because for you as a person who is making that connector, you're still learning, and what you learn from that is applicable in an actual business use case scenario. So I say, go for it.
Remember when it was they were called Those Dynamics guys and became TDG and so on. The earliest in Canvas apps, that was basically, and huge shout out to Brian Dang as well, creating games in Canvas apps. There was a lot of recreating Nintendo games and chess, and Brian did a heap of work there, as well as other people in the community. And you could argue that as well, there's no business benefit, except that what it does is it stretches the capability of what we can. It stretches how we think about things. It stretches how other people might imagine what's possible. It shows off and sort of shows off what you can do, and I think then helps hopefully product teams see what else might be possible. But I'm a big fan of learn with, and I always recommend this to people, learn with something you're interested in, because if you're sitting doing something that's boring for you, you're not going to invest in your own learning. If you can,
and you're not excited about it, right?
And you're going to learn this stuff in the context of building a really cool, frivolous, fun piece, then good for you. And now, as you're saying, you have those skills, but also then someone else might be able to come across and grab that and go, oh, I'm interested in this too. And now this is an entry point for me. So, you know what? If you don't want to use them, don't use them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
On, right?
And and that's what I mean. Like if you you respond and saying, if you're doing something that's fun and interesting, when you show others, others feel that energy from you as well. And I experienced that recently from the Power Hour ANZ. So earlier this month was May 4th, so may the 4th be with you, and it was Fushen and Nathan who did this awesome 1-hour demonstration where they showcased a multitude of features with Canvas apps. And it was basically finding, for those of you who are Star Wars fans, it was to do with Grogu from The Mandalorian. So it was basically trying to find Grogu in different areas in Australia, and that was a theme. I'm sure if I find the recording, we can share it. It's in the Power Hour ANZ.
That's something I need to go back and watch now.
Yeah, no, but it's things like that, because when you see it in a fun way, you start thinking about how you can apply it in a practical sense. Now, one of the things that Nathan had shown was the geospatial capabilities of Canvas apps. And he was saying, this is something that would be useful for people out in the field. So think about like a telecommunications provider. So in Australia, it's Telstra. Over in the United States, you've got people like T-Mobile and Sprint and Verizon. But having that geospatial technology in the palm of your hand in an app, that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right in saying, like, it opens your mind into the different possibilities when you're learning at a fun experience. And don't forget that we all used to be kids, and as kids we had creative minds, and then at some point we became adults, and we've now been brainwashed.
Also the whole headline point of Power Platform and Low Code is about enabling innovation, and so there has to be space for play in innovation. So
exactly, I agree with you.
I don't think we should be stopping it. All right, I reckon we're getting close to the hour, and we've covered.
Oh my gosh, it's already an hour. Sorry, I just saw the
clock. You and I could talk all day.
On my screen. Yeah, we could.
Watching on replay, probably have other things to do, as do we. So let's wrap this up. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you, and thank you everyone who's joined us and commented and given us a hi. If you're watching this on replay, add comments in the video here, and we can certainly keep replying to them. Can't wait to go and play with. I can't wait till the day where I'm going to draw a piece of paper. And I will do a video of this when it's available to me. I'm going to draw something on a bit of paper, and I'm going to take a shot, and I'm going to commit to getting into Power Apps pages, and with that new experience as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Any final words from you, Ian? We'll wrap this thing up.
No, other than, yeah, just be yourself and have fun. I don't know, that was kind of
You know
cheesy.
what? That's a perfect place to end. Let's go right there. Be yourself and have fun. I love it. Thank you for chatting with me. Thanks, everyone. Over and out for now.
Bye.